suspect.
The Tony Jones Show, featuring punk, rockabilly, psychobilly, and Providence, Rhode Island's finest, starts right now.
He's a dangerous militia member, I hear.
Oh, and there she blows.
Friends, the time for mediocrity in broadcasting is over. My name is Tony Jones, and you are tuned in to The Tony Jones Show, your destination for talk and rock. Don't forget you can find us throughout the show on Facebook at facebook.com/Tony Jones Show. And I am also throughout the broadcast on Twitter at Tony Jones NRI. Don't forget to check out TonyJones.org. That is my website. We are over the air, online, in podcast, and broadcasting via Spreaker, playing the best music around, bringing the best folks around right here on the Tony Jones Show. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we kicked things off with a great local band called The Universes. That was a track called Hospitals. Our in-studio guest tonight, Mr. Andy Stone. Andy, good evening.
Hey, Tony, how are you?
So you bailed out of Rhode Island for a while and were crazy enough to actually come back.
Come back, yeah. The boat had bailed from... the water had dried up, so it's safe. Yeah, I was gone for about 20 years or so, and in Boston, Washington, Chicago, L.A., New York, but I grew up here and I love it here, and I came back and I'm happy to be back doing music.
To get off on a tangent for a little while from music, it was that one of the things that got me more active in politics, as I mentioned from time to time, is the fact that there was a mass exodus of my friends from this state. Like every time I turned around, someone was leaving because they couldn't find a job or they just didn't want to be here. You know.
Right.
It's
Well, I always kind of went for work. I mean, I went to L.A. to write TV and did that for about 4 years, and then came back east to write fiction, and then always loved it back east, and then the rest of the time was just kind of traveling around for various other reasons, but. Yeah, I love it here. I love it in New England. It's home. It always has been. So
tell everybody out there who may be listening to this program, hearing your name for the first time, how did you start playing music?
I started as a kid and was writing music as a kid. In high school, I was at PCD and had various bands, and through college up in Boston, I was fortunate enough to be up. A really cool time during the early to mid '80s. So a lot of great Providence bands in high school, and then Boston bands in college, and was playing the whole time and recording and writing. And then I just kind of stopped, and I got into television and. Well, not the band. I was always have been into the band, but my life kind of took a different direction, and. For a while, and then but then got back into playing music about seriously about 10 to 15 years ago.
So were there any specific life experiences that made you decide I need to get back into music, or was just kind of a natural
the lack of money that music brings,
right?
I needed that.
I work in AM radio. I know that feeling.
I was feeling a little too good. No, I've always loved it, and after writing TV for a while and kind of being unfulfilled, creatively, and writing fiction. I wrote a bunch of novels and I published a few, but I never really, couldn't make a living at it,
right.
and was just really sick of chasing the dollar for it. Trying to, music had always been there for me,
mm-hmm.
and I really just started doing it for fun, and I started writing. I was writing novels at the time, and I remember literally writing the lyrics in a coffee shop one morning. And I know that sounds horribly trite, but but I was writing. It's just it was like I'm going to have fun writing some lyrics and not worried about anybody trying to make money from them.
I was in a similar situation with radio. I did radio for a while, and then I said, this sucks, and I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back a few years back and did it completely on my own terms. So having a different income source or other hobbies or other stuff going around allows you to say, kind of like, screw you, I'm going to do what I want. And
exactly,
it's similar for a lot of musicians. When they get to that point, they can play what they want, they can do what they want, and they can put out what they want. And also, what's changed is, especially with music and broadcasting and everything, is the amount of technology we have at our fingertips now.
Right.
I mean, if you would have said to anybody 20 years ago, hey, you can put your music on a thing called Reverb Nation, and people in Pakistan will be downloading MP3s.
Right,
That's
exactly.
insane.
I mean, it's amazing, and you know, I started making use of that technology early on. I mean, it's great. But you're right. I mean, it solves a lot of problems. It creates other problems. But,
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're right. The ability to do things on your own terms, you know. And you know, within your own parameters,
Right.
you know, you have to kind of have a goal. You know, what do you want to do with this? And obviously, you know, my goal may be different from other people's goals. I mean, but you know, yeah, the technology is amazing. People are recording at home. You can, you know, you can make a really good sounding record. You know, by doing a lot of it yourself these days. If you have the talent. I mean, but you know. You need to have the talent and the skill to really do it. You know, you still need people to. You know.
Even with the technology, you do have to be incredibly driven, because just because the studio is down in your basement doesn't mean you're going to get off the couch and go down to the studio.
Right. In fact, that it can. You know, if you don't have that discipline, it can be even harder.
Yeah.
You know, because you know you have to be hungry to you know, and it has to be something you're constantly doing. You know, I think for me, I mean, it's anything creative has been always kind of going on in the back of my head. You know, it doesn't really always, it doesn't stop. You know, it's so I'll be writing lyrics a lot of times while I'm having conversations. I mean, to different degrees.
Keeps you up at night.
It does, yeah. I mean, kept me up the other night. Actually, it did. Much to my girlfriend's chagrin. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's, you know, you still have to, you know, a lot of the, you know, the fundamental things are not going to change. You know, you have to know how to play. You have to know how to write and sing and you know, perform. You have to know how to you know, just do all those basic things. It's just, so the medium has remained the same, but the avenues have changed.
Being true audio nerds, before Andy and I went on the air, I was lamenting the fact that here in the studio I have a pair of $10 headphones and I have a pair of $85 headphones, and I like the $10 headphones a little bit better.
We're going to wrestle for them after on the break.
I switched them out and hooked into the $10 phones. I'm going to spin some tunes. We're going to come back. We're going to have more with Andy Stone. He's going to perform live for you. But before that, we're going to hear from the Wolfbang Blues, another fantastic local band. And you know, I'll be honest, there was a lull for a while. So Andy, I solicit local music to play on the show and to play on RI Free Radio, and there was a lull for a little while in quality content. And now it seems from the end of last year to the beginning of this year, I have just gotten so much awesome. I mean, I'm not trying to kiss anybody's butt, but I have gotten so much awesome stuff to play on the air. And this group is included. It's the Wolfbang Blues, and this is a track called Cold Blooded.
Oh, brother man,
some Michael Graves right here on the Tony Jones Show off of the Vagabond album. That was Best of Me. Before that, we heard some great local music, the Wolfbang Blues, Cold Blooded, the name of that track. As always, thank you all for checking in at facebook.com/Tony Jones Show and on Twitter at Tony Jones in RI. Always a pleasure. I want to thank you all for checking that out, tuning in, and of course everybody listening on Spreaker and iTunes. Good evening, and of course everybody listening over the air. Now, a lot of kids don't know what over the air is, or they just don't even care, but a big thank you and hello to everybody listening over the air. We do have great musician, singer-songwriter Andy Stone in studio. Andy, I would classify at least your recorded music as pop, as feel-good. How would you classify yourself?
I'd say it's... I like to say it's kind of retro and or a little bit of vintage retro 60s, 80s mix. It's kind of a mashup of, Beatles and the Zombies and Squeeze and XTC. But, I don't like to put labels on anything.
Unfortunately, pop does have a little bit of a negative connotation these days, maybe dirty word.
But I mean, it's like it's kind of like R&B. Back in the day, it was completely different from what R&B.
That's for sure.
But I pop rock. I don't care what you call me as long as you call me.
I was at playing a gig with the Headcutters once, which is a great classic R&B like rockabilly. Right. So we're telling some young kids, they said, "Oh, what do you play?" And the Headcutter said R&B, and they said, "Oh, you mean like Usher?" No. More like the Blues Brothers are, and of course the kid had no idea what the Blues Brothers were.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny how things are getting just grow like vines. Just different styles, come out of something else, and they give. I don't know why they give the same names to them, but
which is funny because it was at one point, just like every writer is trying to write the great American novel, every musician was trying to write the great American pop song, and then all of a sudden, pop became a dirty word.
Right. Well, it's what I consider pop too is kind of like early '60s stuff. I mean, I think you can still call that pop or rock and roll. I don't know. I mean, I really don't get too hung up on the labels of it because like you said, everybody has different understandings of the words. It seems. I just do rock music. I do indie rock. With a kind of a literary bent and some pups thrown in.
There's your new genre, literary indie.
Yeah, lit rock, I think it's called lit pop. Yeah.
So Andy does have his guitar strapped on. Are you interested in
Sure.
giving everybody a live one?
Yeah, I'll do a live one. This one is from my latest record. The record's called "This Giant Awoke," and this is a song called "Witnessing My Reveal." This is cool here. Okay. If I let you look inside, deep down where I tend to hide, would you favor me and take a glance, or would you take a chance? There's so much I'd like to show, so much I want you to know, but I'm frightened of the way you feel, witnessing my reveal. Lessons from the past, first impressions always last. I can't handle being cast into a terrain not so easy to explain. If I let you look inside, deep down where I tend to hide, would you favor me and take a glance? Would you take a chance? Since I was very young, my own jury was always hung, and I'll admit I was the one. Insecurities incriminating me. There's so much I'd like to show, so much I want you to know, but I'm frightened of the way you feel, witnessing my reveal. Would you favor me and take a chance? Would you take a glance? Will you be sincere? I think I'd like to bring you near. Just promise me you'll end near. It's so hard to trust. How can I just, if I let you look inside, deep down where I tend to hide? Would you favor me and take a chance? There's so much I'd like to show, so much I want you to know, but I'm frightened of the way you feel, witnessing my reveal. Witnessing my reveal, witnessing my reveal.
Good old-fashioned rock and roll radio. Andy Stone performing live for you right here on the Tony Jones Show. Tell us a little bit about that one.
That was a song, that was a kind of a fun song I wrote. I wrote the chord changes first. I had just kind of different placeholder lyrics, and a friend of mine, the guy who actually sang it on the record, because I don't do much of the singing on my records, so for obvious reasons. But the singer said, "Great song, but I hate the lyrics, the original lyrics," and they're very sappy. They're like, it was very Moon June Spoon, I rewrote the lyrics. I sent him a demo, and he said, "Oh, this is great. I want to do this." So Dave Sebastian is his name. He's a great singer out of Chicago, and we recorded it. And there you go.
Was the record predominantly taken care of in Chicago, or did you make it here in Rhode Island?
No, this record was done while I was living in Chicago.
Cool.
So I did a lot of the tracking there. In various studios. I also did some in New York. I did some vocal work. I have another friend of mine who's a great singer. His name is Tom Gottsman, and he's out of D.C. So, I spent the majority of the cost of this record were travel costs. And then I did some mixing in New York City as well with an old friend of mine, and who also did some backing vocals. So yeah, I was done all over.
We were talking with Brian Shovelton a few weeks ago. He has his first solo album coming out, and he was talking about kind of the same thing of just being able to tap into these great people and say, hey, you want to sing this song? You want to come down? You want to do guitar for this? You want to do bass for this? It's
I know Brian. I've met him a couple of times. He's a great guy. And yeah, I mean that's an interesting thing, with a guy like me who's a songwriter first. I mean, I have a new band I'm putting together, but again, it's back to the technology. A guy like me who doesn't necessarily have a band, I can go and frees me up. I can go and do a couple songs here and work with these people over there, and it's nice, and if you're lucky, you get a cohesive sounding record. But at the same time, unfortunately, the idea of the record as an entity is a bit passe in a way. So that is also freeing because you can do different styles. I've got like a song that's a very boogie woogie piano feel on this, and a song with a couple ballads. So it's nice to be able to kind of. It gives you ways to expand what you're doing.
I'm glad that you mentioned different styles, because the next track that I have queued up here is probably, I can't explain the style, but it's definitely different. They've been in this very studio. They're called the Volcano Kings. The name of the album is Music for an Exotic Monster Beach Party in Outer Space, Volume 1. And This is a song called Do the Transylvania Twerk.
Now time for a new dance. Get ready to shake your booties to the dance that started deep within the Transylvanian forest. The Transylvania Twerk!
preacher paid to sanctify her rape. She's been knocked up, slapped down, held back and kicked around. It's a crying shame. Makes no difference which way you choose. When you ain't got nothing to lose. She felt cheated and confused. 6 months gone mistreated and abused. Headed westward down the railroad tracks, while her old man bled to death with a knife in his back. She's been knocked up, slapped down, held back and kicked around. She ain't never coming back to this stinking town. Knocked up, slapped down, held back and kicked around. It's a crying shame. Oh, it's a crying shame. Yeah, it's a crying shame. Oh, it's a crying shame. Yeah, it's a crying shame.
The drowsy surgeon pinched the anesthetician. She leaned forward to administer the juice. He said, now Ben, if you count backwards from 10, well in this second hour hell is breaking loose. Well in this second hour hell is breaking loose. For years he had been a model husband. You know, he stuck by her when the times were rough. But this morning on the train, you overheard a conversation. He said, haven't I been honest long enough? Oh yeah, haven't I been honest long enough? Bobby couldn't fully grasp the new arrangement. And every evening asked, when's Daddy coming home? His older sister rolled her eyes and dug her nails into her thighs, and she continued typing on the telephone. And no one even touched the mashed potatoes, and no one seemed to think about dessert. And Margaret picked up all the dishes, stared into the middle distance, tried to focus on the things that didn't hurt. Oh, yeah, all the things that didn't hurt. His luxury apartment. No one's there to say he's had enough. He's not sure which young lady has borrowed the Mercedes, but he's certain now that she has called him bluff. And that's nothing if you've talked with his accountants, but he stopped opening the letters that they've sent. Out on the balcony, he looks over every tree, flicks a cigarette and studies its descent. Flicks a cigarette and studies its descent.
Some Joe Fletcher and The Wrong Reasons right here on the Tony Jones Show. The Drowsy Surgeon, the name of that one. Before that, we heard from the Benedictions off of Play Devil Music. That was a track called Cryin' Shame. And then last time we chatted, I brought you into the Volcano Kings off of Music for an Exotic Monster Beach Party in Outer Space Volume 1. That was my favorite, what is possibly my favorite Volcano Kings track. Long before anybody else was talking about twerking, the Volcano Kings were doing the Transylvania twerk. That's the track you heard. Facebook.com/Tony Jones Show. TonyJones.org is my website. I'm on Twitter at TonyJonesNRI. In studio with me this evening, Andy Stone. Andy,
hey.
Thanks for hanging out and
Been great. Thank you for having me.
Music nerding out with me.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you.
So, how is for you? I talked to a lot of musicians about the difference of having a plugged-in band and also at the same time just being able to take your guitar out there and do the singer-songwriter thing and have some fun. Mm-hmm. And for me, someone who has always had the luxury of having a full band on stage with me, I think personally that if it was just me and an acoustic guitar, I would feel completely naked.
Yeah.
But for you, is it plugged-in band? Is it singer-songwriter? Or how are you feeling on that?
Well, first of all, it's more. I don't feel completely naked, but maybe a Speedo. I'm the fat guy on the beach with a Speedo. No, well, the thing is, it's interesting because I said this earlier. I don't really sing on my records. I sing a couple tracks on the new one, but I'm not a singer. That's always been an obstacle. I think if I were a really great singer, I would have stayed with rock music, and not gone on to TV writing and the other things I did. But it's a lot of fun because I get to do both. I mean, I'm putting a band together, and I'm really fortunate to have hooked up with some really cool people from the area who want to do all original music, and that's great. But then it's like, going in the studio and writing stuff and going in the studio and working and recording, that's really cool. And I get to kind of cover myself. Like when I do this kind of stuff, singing, just me and a guitar or playing with a band, it's like doing cover versions of my own records.
Right. Yeah.
Which so it keeps it interesting, and so I enjoy that. It's a lot of fun and it's creative, I think.
My good friend Wolfman Chuck, who has Wolfman Chuck and the Spookalele of Doom, which is a horror punk ukulele act,
nice,
seems to be playing every weekend because it's just him and the ukulele. And there's the drummer is in Texas this weekend and the bass player is on a bender. He just grabs his ukulele and he hits the streets.
Yeah, I think that's great. And why not?
Yeah.
Especially with the way people are recording today, and people can record today. You can do a lot of different things, and there are a lot of. It's not just local musicians who are doing this kind of thing. There are a lot of, and how many huge rock bands, guys go out and do side projects.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing.
We played a little Michael Graves earlier, and he does the similar thing. He has his, full Michael Graves band, but he also goes out and does the Vagabond acoustic tour, which is just... I guess I never really thought of it like that before until you said it. It really is almost like seeing like a Jekyll and Hyde, two different sides of a great act.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's like if you eat steak every night, you'll enjoy steak. But if you eat, if you intersperse it with something, a salad, you'll have different things coming in, and then different things, you'll grow in different ways.
Right.
It's kind of like that. It's nourishment, I think, for the creative spirit. Without getting too hippie about it. But it's using different muscles.
Right.
Because just playing with a guitar is completely different from playing in a band. Just because the amount of playing you're doing, for instance, you're playing. The more people you have, you're playing. The less you actually play, as you know from being in a band.
And the best thing is, for me, if you can get in an honest band, is being able to bounce ideas off of each other. Now, there is nothing more liberating than when a band member has enough honesty with you to say, dude, I'm sorry, but that sucks.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, finding people like that to work with is invaluable. And whether or not you're in a band or you're working with a producer in a studio and it's just you. I mean, it's liberating and I find it very welcoming because I never pretend that I have all the answers. And I think it's it's very Lennon and McCartney thing. I mean, it's like the old story about the song "Getting Better." Lennon sitting there saying it can't get much worse, and that became a part of the tune.
No matter what you're doing, whether it's music, politics, broadcasting, your day job, whatever it is, for the love of God, don't only be surrounded by yes men.
Yes, exactly. But you're right. We can all learn from people. I've always held that. It doesn't matter who you are, how far you go in whatever direction. You can be. You can be the president of the United States. Whoever. It doesn't matter. You can always learn from somebody.
I said to someone not too long ago, fairly recently actually, that I was thinking about doing a special broadcast featuring all of the music that was popular during World War I. And they said, really, dude? And I was like, the other thing, too, is if anybody, and no offense if you have ever written a rock opera, but if anybody comes up with the idea of starting a rock opera, it normally doesn't work out.
But those tunes, for instance, the Great American Songbook kind of thing. I mean, there's some fascinating stuff there. Wonderful songs. I think rock operas are great. I'd love to be able to. I'd love to do something like that.
Every once in a while, it is done right, but
yeah, absolutely.
Then you go out and see the bands that are, wearing tinfoil hats and stuff.
Well, but from the writing process, it's like writing a short story versus writing the novel. You're writing a bunch of songs that are all, that aren't just self-contained. They themselves are becoming, a big, the big piece. I mean, it's like the